Welcome to The Disappearing Mind, a unique podcast helping you find clarity and support along your dementia journey. Now, join National Dementia Trainer and Coach Dawn Platt for an all-new episode.
Welcome back to the Disappearing Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Platt. Today, I'm doing an episode that's a little bit different than one I normally do, but I am very interested in really talking in generalities. Today, my guest and I are going to have a discussion, an open discussion about questions that we feel like families would like to ask. Some families do ask, but generally, it might be questions that families don't even consider until the time that they're impacted for it. My guest today is Maggie Mariello. She is the Assistant National Director of Memory Care Programs at Discovery Senior Living. And Maggie has over 25, possibly 30 years of experience in memory care in all areas, but especially in memory care management, operating a neighborhood specifically for memory care as a memory care director. So welcome back to the podcast, Maggie.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited today. We're going to do something a little bit different. We don't really have a script of any kind, but in a conversation, Maggie and I decided that we were going to talk about just some questions that maybe you don't get on the tour of memory care. So today we're talking about families interested in a memory care community, or families who are in a memory care community who, probably have toured and maybe have been there a while, but there are things that maybe aren't covered readily, but over time could come up. And so we wanted to have an open discussion about those questions, seeing how between us we have multiple years in the memory care setting arena, and we've worked with many families, providing support groups and just generally walking families through the dementia journey. So let's get into it, Maggie. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions that you actually came up with is, why does memory care exist and what assisted living can and can't do? But before we answer that question, for our listening audience, I want to define the differences because a lot of people don't understand the differences. So when we talk about an assisted living community, it is usually a senior living community where someone goes in, rents, is admitted, moves in. And in the assisted living side, it is generally for social and leisure support. They provide dining, housekeeping, and meals. And they can get some assistance with medications and activities of daily living, which are bathing, grooming, toileting, those type, dressing, transportation to and from medical. I mean, that's typically what we see in assisted living historically. And then there is memory care. Memory care can be a freestanding building separate from assisted living or on a campus with independent living, assisted, and memory care. But typically what we're going to see is assisted living and memory care combined. That's the most common way we see it really across the United States. And so memory care is obviously for the person who has a diagnosis of cognitive impairment of some type. And generally, what we like to see is a diagnosis of dementia. So that can cover a gamut of types of dementia. And the services change, which we'll get into with our first question. So Maggie, why does memory care exist, and what can assisted living can and can't do in regards to someone who has cognitive impairment?
Well, assisted living is wonderful for the fact that you get to retain so much of your independence, and you basically pick and choose what assistance you need. The miracle of memory care is we are there to support and guide them without them even realizing that they have to ask for it. So in memory care, our first step is to support them so they can have that quality of life and that feel like they're independent while still getting that extra support that they need. Secondly, memory care, our goal is always safety.
Mm-hmm.
In assisted living, it is not a secure environment. So the residents can come and go as they please.
They might even drive, right?
Yeah, we have assisted living residents who drive cars, who
Mm-hmm.
go on trips, they go on cruises, things along those lines. In our memory care, because of their dementia concerns, it's a secured environment. So we know that they're safe. They still have some freedom to roam around their houses, but we're not worried about them going out unsupervised and getting injured.
Yeah, strolling because they're confused and may walk out a door or open a window or something like that. So, Maggie, when if I came to visit a community that was assisted living and memory care, as a child, and my parent had dementia, but was in the early stages, which one would I pick? AL or memory care, and why?
Well, you will see people in assisted living with mild cognitive impairment, those early signs of dementia. The deciding factor is, do they just need some support, some reminders, or is it a safety concern? Do they see the clock and it says 3 o'clock and they know it's 3 in the afternoon? Or are you concerned that they think it's 3 o'clock in the morning? Do they know where their home is? So if your loved one knows where they are, but they're sometimes forgetting, an activity
Mm-hmm.
or a meal time, and they just need a reminder, assisted living would be the place. But if you're concerned about them waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and not knowing where they are,
Mm-hmm.
if you're concerned about their safety and awareness of appliances or even their quality of life because they're not going to remember how to do things, that's where a memory care evaluation might come in play.
Might come into play. So, for someone who has an early dementia diagnosis, mild cognitive impairment, or something like that, we often see in senior living that people delay making a choice, which can sometimes be detrimental to them because of the services and support that help people, even in the early stages, right, live life and quality of life and maintain independence. But what would be the benefit of moving in earlier to a senior living community in the assisted living side when you had a diagnosis of dementia, but you're still fairly functional, but you have a little cognitive deficit? What would be the benefit of that?
The number one thing that we actually learned during COVID is how vital socialization is. We've seen over and over again that when a senior starts having some of those cognitive challenges, they'll withdraw from socialization, which can actually speed up their cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
So moving into an assisted living community, they get that engagement, they get the socialization, they get the ownership and control of their life again. And we have found over and over again, this helps slow that decline and gives them a
Yes.
higher quality of life.
Yeah. And really, what we've seen them remain independent longer because they didn't have a supportive environment. Maybe they lived alone and didn't have any family, or maybe it was nutritional. They weren't eating properly. And, talk about that. I mean, we've seen people move in who are actually pretty confused. And then we get them in, they get routine care and meals, and they're obviously better cognitively.
One of the number one side effects of dehydration is confusion
Mm-hmm.
and dementia type symptoms. We see over and over again people who have vitamin deficiencies, who are dehydrated, whose sleep is confused. They're not getting the proper medication. Oftentimes, our loved ones won't go to the doctors, won't be taking their medication on time. They're not eating properly. Once they get into that environment where there's people to encourage them to take their medications, to see a doctor, to drink fluids, to eat a green vegetable,
Mm-hmm.
we just see them light up and almost come back to life because they have what they need for nutrients.
So you and I have done thousands of visits to hospitals, rehabs, and homes to evaluate and assess someone who's moving to senior living. What are some of the determining factors you would share with families when you would recommend memory care?
When I come and visit your loved one, of course, their doctors and their rehab, they're going to talk about diagnoses and medications. But what I want to do is I want to talk to your loved one and see where they are. When I'm having a conversation with them, are they really oriented to themselves or are they confused? When I talk about things that they're able to do, you tell me that they haven't driven in 5 years, but they're telling me that they drive all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to set off some bells and whistles that we're having a little bit of difficulty in placing time and sequences. When I ask them about their medications and they tell me, oh, I don't take any medications, but yet we know they're taking blood pressure medicine or they may be diabetic. This again tells me that they're not maybe safety aware. So these are things that are going to let me know just in conversations with your loved one that we need to look further into this, that there might be a cognitive issue that we might need to look into memory care for.
Yeah, and you would suggest to the family, that they use memory care. So let's just talk about that a little bit more, because I know that is it's difficult for families, to kind of make that decision. They see it as, I don't know, maybe giving up, or maybe they're fearful or whatever. But we serve both sides, but our specialty is in memory care. But what can AL not do for a progressive memory care resident who's well into their diagnosis? What can AL not do?
Well, assisted living, they are wonderful for assisting.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to go and, visit your loved one in the morning and say, hey, can I help you get ready? But if your loved one says no, then that's their choice. And activities, they're going to have activities throughout the day. But those activities are going to be designed for the group, for the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they remind your loved one of the activity, but they're not going to encourage them. They're not going to have the time and the capability of really focusing on your loved one. In a memory care setting, our team members to residents are much lower. So our caregivers are trained to spend more time with your loved one, to really encourage them and assist them in getting ready for the day so they have the best start possible. Our programs, and you'll notice the difference between activities and programs. Activities for a group, they're fun, they may be engaging. Our programming, of course, we want them to enjoy it, but we also are always talking about dual task, about having an inner meeting for that program. And we design our programs in our memory care so that your loved one will enjoy it, it will meet their interests, but it'll also be cognitively or physically challenging for them to help strengthen them. So in a memory care where it's a smaller community, a smaller neighborhood with more team members there to assist, they're able to get more engagement and more just cognitive support for them.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the specialized training that the staff in memory care would definitely have, and the staff in assisted living may not have.
Well, they are required here in the state of Florida, assisted living communities, caregivers are required to have 4 hours of dementia training.
Mm-hmm.
That's set across the board. Any licensed assisted living is going to require that. But to work in a memory care-based community, that doubles automatically their first year to 8 hours. So no matter what, if it's a memory care community, that team member is automatically going to have 8 hours of training. And then every year, an additional 4 hours. And when I talk to families who are visiting communities, I say, this is what the state says they have to have no matter what. Ask them what, in addition to what's required to the state, from the state, what do they provide for training for their team members? And most communities that are more reputable are going to have continuing education, dementia-based, for their care team members to make sure that your loved ones are getting the highest quality of care by trained team members as possible.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Talk a little bit, would you, about uh, specialized program. I know you talked about it a little, but it's so very different from the social, leisure, entertainment kind of thing that senior citizens like to get involved in. But memory care is quite different. It's more cognitively supported. And why is that important?
Well, in assisted living, I like to say that it's kind of like you're on the Love Boat and Julie's bringing you to, bingo on the Lido deck. In memory care, our goal really is, if you don't use it, you lose it. We're not going to fix your loved one, but by engaging them with that dual tasking, by challenging each part of their brain throughout the day, we're going to slow down the process and we're going to give them the highest quality of life. But we don't want them to feel like they're in school. So how is it that we can take their life story, where what they've done in their life, have a program that's engaging to them, that's also going to use different parts of their brain?
Mm-hmm.
So if your loved one enjoyed gardening, great, we're in the garden, but we may be planting seeds. We may be learning about their cycles of, what's the proper time to plant? How do we hydrate them? And then, and really getting them to talk to us about their knowledge so that we're getting them to engage their past memories, engaging their hands to help with circulation and dexterity, but also getting them to touch that soil and to feel the environment. And so by including all of that, we're engaging so many parts of their brains and firing off those neurons. It's automatically going to give them the higher quality of life they deserve.
So for the family who's fairly new to this, or maybe is currently or recently moved into a community, let's talk a little bit about something that we have expertise in, and that is behavioral management. And most types of dementia, right, have some sort of behavioral expression with the types of diseases that we see. They're not all the same, but we do see behavioral outbursts, behavioral expression, which are just a communication and a voice, but it's very common, for us to see that, and we're experienced at that, and we kind of know what to do and expect that. But, in assisted living, how is that handled differently, and why would you want your loved one to then be in a memory care if that were happening?
Well, in assisted living, the caregivers are trained to give care.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trained in all the different behavioral expressions. So in assisted living, it's going to be, they got angry in the dining room. Well, they're going to tell your loved one, you can't behave like that in the dining room. If you behave like that, you're not going to be allowed in the dining room. It could be as simple as that. Whereas in memory care, if you're having challenges in the dining room, we're going to want to take a step back and look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that where you're sitting, the lights are too bright? Could it be it's too loud? Could it be that we need to kind of shuffle when you're going into the dining room so it's a calmer environment for you? Could it be that you're actually tired and maybe you need to rest a little bit before dinner? So with our team members being trained in understanding those behavioral expressions, and also us having the higher team members there available, we're able to accommodate and to understand and to assist.
I know sometimes families reject the move from assisted living to memory care, but what are the signs that it's time to make the move, and what signs are often missed?
So the number one reason, honestly, that I see someone moving from assisted living to memory care is because of safety emergency. And that's sad because oftentimes there were signs beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Your loved one is calling you at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning saying, where are you? You're supposed to be picking me up.
Maybe multiple times,
Multiple
right?
times. That's a sign. That's a symptom that they're getting time and place confused. Now put yourself in your loved one's shoes. They're scared. They're confused.
Yes.
Thank goodness they had the wherewithal to call you instead of just getting up and go looking for you. So oftentimes that's a symptom that's missed. Them getting lost in their life. They may come down the dining room looking for your other parent who's passed away. Again, in assisted living, there is not going to be team members necessarily who's available to support them through that and guide them and give them that shoulder when they realize they're confused and realize their loved one has passed away.
Yeah.
So having that, oftentimes those are missed.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always tell families, let's look at it when it's, supporting them and giving them that higher quality of life before we're having the conversation because it's an emergency.
Yeah. And oftentimes, our assisted livings are spacious. I can get lost in them, right? They're big, they're spacious. Our dining rooms are massive, like a large restaurant. That's hard to navigate if you have any kind of cognitive impairment. So even, coming out of their apartment and looking down that long hallway, that's not unusual that there would be, no one in the hallway. It's like a large hotel, right? That's what it's like. And so that can be a barrier for someone not knowing how to get down the hallway to anywhere, right? And not being able to navigate. That creates stress for them. And then the other area, and you kind of alluded to it, is walking into a filled dining room. When you have cognitive impairment where people are eating and socializing and it's loud and there might be music, and how difficult that can be for someone with any kind of cognitive impairment, especially if they're having an off day, off time, which happens. And so physical plant, NAL, is broad and spacious and made to be navigated, where memory care, that navigation path is normally guided. It normally is a circle or a square, right? You don't run into a lot of doors, right, kind of thing. But talk about the difference and why between the size of apartments in assisted living and memory care.
Well, in assisted living, you are coming from your home. So you're coming from this big home, you have your furniture, and so you're downsizing into an apartment. And so you want to still have that space. You want to have your freedom. You may be doing puzzles or having grandkids over for sleepovers. You're having friends in to play cards. You're in a senior apartment community. And so you will find there's 2-bedroom apartments in assisted living where you may have a bedroom, but you have another bedroom set up as your den or your office. And this is quite common, to have this in assisted living. We want you to feel like it's your space in your home, because oftentimes you may be coming from a huge house. And so you go into assisted living, you've got these nice big apartments, you've got a nice big campus, you may have a pool and a game room and a library and a bingo room and a theater. And there's lovely, and they're great for someone who may have been in a large community and you're used to going to bingo on Thursday nights and the ladies group going out to lunch once a week. You can continue that lifestyle and just get a little bit of support where you need it. But then it comes to a point where that space is too big and it can be overwhelming and it can be overstimulate you, and you get concerned and you can't handle that. And in memory care, our goal is for their apartments to be smaller, to have items of comfort in there. But when they go in there, they can feel it. That's their space and they don't get overwhelmed. They can see all their belongings just by turning their head. They can see, oh, that's my recliner. That's a picture of my photo. They don't have to go searching for their things. And that can provide a lot of calming and safety for them. And so that's a big difference you will
Yes.
see in the style of
Yeah, good
apartments.
point. Good point. Let's move on. We have so many questions, and I know we're not going to get through all of them, but I want to talk about third-party vendors. And for family members that don't understand who or what those are, Maggie's going to go through this with me. But I want them to kind of know and understand that their loved one may be seen by a third-party provider. And why would that be if they live in a senior living? And what are their roles to support someone who lives in memory care?
Well, if you have a loved one who's, aging, especially as they get cognitive issues, going to the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
going to the dentist, going to the podiatrist can be a lot. It can be very overwhelming for them and very overwhelming for you.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal is by bringing in these providers to your loved one can be in an environment that they feel safe and secure in. Also, your loved one may not be able to communicate as well about what's going on in their lives. So if this provider comes into where they are, our clinical team can communicate with them and let them know what's really going on in your loved one's life. Because your loved one may say, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm doing great. But meanwhile, they've been having problems swallowing. But because of their cognitive decline, they don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, the podiatrist may come and ask, how are you doing walking? They're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. But meanwhile, we know as their care provider, they're having balance issues. Their toes are hurting them. So having these providers come in, your loved one's able to get the care that they need in their home.
Yeah. So let's talk about who are some of these providers. There are multiple. What are the most common type of providers that come in and provide services to someone in memory care?
So their primary care physician,
Mm-hmm.
and oftentimes that will be a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. And they will come in, however often your loved one needs. They may come in once a month,
Mm-hmm.
depending on their diagnosis.
And that may not be the doctor they had in their home, right? That doctor may not come out and visit. It might be someone who services the community, right?
Correct. As we get into the stages of dementia, this is a conversation we often have with the families. Yes, they may have gone to that primary family physician for 30 years, but now they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And, we really encourage our families to work with a physician who expertise is dementia
Yes.
and the geriatric community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we oftentimes build multiple relationships with medical groups because everyone has their own needs and wants from a physician. And also there's multiple different types of insurances, and not every doctor and every insurance talks. But we will often talk about the different physicians and what their needs are. But the number one we see is a primary care physician that comes into the community
Mm-hmm.
that we can have that conversation with, and that you can have the conversation with to make sure that your loved one is getting, the actual care that they need.
Great. So there's also home health.
Mm-hmm. So oftentimes your loved one will need home health.
Mm-hmm.
Most assisted livings are not going to be able to do the extended things that a nurse can do or a home health agency
Yeah,
can do.
generally a registered nurse.
Yeah.
There are nurses, but they're not always registered nurses.
Correct. So there may be some skin issues.
Yeah.
There might be diabetes issues or, balance issues. So oftentimes we will work with you and their primary care physician to have a home health agency come in
Mm-hmm.
and help give that extended care that your loved one needs.
So that
in their
might be a
home.
physical therapist, an occupational therapist for dressing and grooming. It could be a psych nurse, right? A
Mhm.
specialty psych nurse, or it could be major medication adjustments, or just a major evaluation. It might be a nurse practitioner, like you talked about. So there's all kinds of services. Those are generally covered under Medicare or private insurance, right, to cover that. And so those are available to support specialty services that maybe the community doesn't provide or isn't licensed to provide in the state that they operate. Sometimes that's the issue. Let's talk about another service that few people know about. It's the dreaded word, but we find this particular agency very supportive and very useful to our residents and to our staff, and that's hospice. Let's talk about hospice.
People hear the word hospice and they think back to 25 years ago, when if you're in hospice, you're dying next week and they're going to do nothing for you and they're just going to help you die.
Right.
That is not the case. Hospice has become a true support partner in the dementia community. The reality is dementia is a terminal disease. It does not mean that your loved one is going to die next week.
Yes.
But it means that they need that extra support. So hospice can come in and help with so many things. Everything from having an extra nurse coming in to help oversee their care, to make sure that they get that little extra TLC and just attention that traditionally even a loving memory care can't do. But hospice has so many other services. They have different types of therapies, music therapies, pet therapies, massage therapies. They have volunteers who will come in and play cards with your loved one. They can help with medications and equipment costs. This is not a disease that's financially, inexpensive.
Right.
And dementia is a long disease process. They really call it the long goodbye for a reason. But to give your loved one the highest quality of life, we're going to suggest as many different things that we can do to give them the support that they need. And hospice is a great tool to utilize.
Exactly. So in addition to what we've talked about, there might be podiatrists, there could be a mobile dentist. We have mobile x-ray that comes in. Labs come in and draw blood work if the doctor orders it. It's just kind of endless, the services, because it is difficult for individuals who have active and progressed dementia to go in and out of the community. It can be difficult and pose issues for the family, as well as the team in transportation. It could be traumatic. We'll talk another time about ER and hospitalization. We won't cover that quite today, but do families have a choice in the providers that come in and take care of their loved one?
Families always have a choice. This is not a military regime. We want to make sure that we're partnering with their family. Every family has different ethics, different morals, different beliefs, and what they want and how they see their loved one's disease progression. And that's why we want to make sure to have that open communication from the first time you visit us. And that's why we always have multiple physicians groups, multiple options. We don't want you to feel like you have to do this or you have to do that. We want to make sure that we support you, because it's not just your loved one that needs the support. You do also as we go through this disease process.
So what is the mechanism that you inform the family about this, or you keep them informed so that they can be part of the progression and the decision-making process?
Well, first of all, the first time you come in, we want to make sure that you're having that open communication. You're meeting all the members of the team so that if you have a question about medication, who do you ask? If you have a question about where they are in their disease process, who do you ask? But oftentimes there's going to be a designated person in the community that you can always go and ask questions, and they will help you in the correct direction. But one things we want to start doing is on that day one is talking to you about your family, your beliefs, and what your needs are. We're going to take in consideration your insurances, your financial situation. Oftentimes also, if your loved one's a veteran, there's other benefits.
Yes, we didn't talk about that.
There's another and the government doesn't knock on your door and say, oh, you're a veteran, here, let us help you. So we really want to make sure that we are your partner in this, and we help get all the services and what you need for your loved one and for yourself, So we'll work as a team to make sure that, we help you get what you need.
Talk a little bit about the care planning process.
Care planning, that starts the first day we meet your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't stop, because as we progress through this disease, what we need changes. So you're going to see in that first week or so, we're going to be talking almost daily, if not daily, about what we're seeing. And then at that first month, we're going to again talk about the changes we're seeing and what we really feel they need from us. And then it's going to be, every few months.
Mm-hmm.
But that care plan, honestly, any memory care your loved one is in, I would be expecting to have a true care plan meeting about every 6 months. Even if it's to say, what, your loved one's doing great. They're, we feel like they're really stable where they are, but still to make sure you're having that communication. That is the biggest thing we see families all the time talking about is communication. They just need to know.
Yes. Yeah, they do. Okay, I'm going to shift the conversation now to something that we've talked about before, and I know you like to talk about, and it is difficult. When you promise never to lie to each other, right? And now you're being instructed to tell a therapeutic fib or a white lie to your person who has dementia. Let's talk about that.
So the number one promise you make to your loved one is that you will always love them and you will always be there for them. Sometimes we need to take that love that we have for them and realize that what we're doing, we're not telling them that we don't love them. We're not telling them that we're not trying to take care of them. We're telling them that we're here to help them, and we're giving them the line or the help that they will most believe.
Yes.
Your loved one may get to a point where the truth doesn't make sense and it would hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you love that person, you don't want to hurt them, you want to help them. And for the highest quality of life for them, it might be to give them what makes sense. And that's where we call it a therapeutic fib, because it is a therapy to them.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell them the truth, it's going to hurt them.
Yes.
You're going to cause harm. And none of us ever want to harm the person we love.
And, we don't want to say things that, even though they're true, for example, your mom died 30 years ago, right? I mean, I know that's probably the truth, but if they're living in that world and they have come back to the time when they had mom, they had mother, and they do it multiple times she dies to them in their heart. And it's really sad. And it's a reaction we don't want them to relive. And because they forget all of that and do it again over and over and over and over again, they have that trauma. And it's so unnecessary. And it's just so much easier to say, well, mom went out to the grocery store. She'll be back later. So I think people don't realize that they may come back and ask for mom again, but they're not going to come back and go, you told me mom was coming back and that she was at it's not going to happen that way. They do not have that cognitive ability to function in that way. It's a momentary need. It's a momentary sense of safety and security and kind of passing through that moment. And you can do it hundreds of times with the same effect, right, Maggie? I mean, and how much better is that? And how much calmer is that to just agree with them and get them through that moment than it is to tell them something like she has been gone for 30 years that they cannot process and will not realize or ever come to terms with that because their dementia is so progressed.
And ask them about their mom.
Yes.
Say, your mom, she went out shopping. I don't know what she was going shopping for, though. What does she like to go shopping for?
Yes.
You could bring up end up learning more about if this is your parent, your grandparent that you may never have known.
Exactly. And, isn't it interesting? And I went through this with my mom. When they get full blown into the dementia, they remember stuff that they never shared with you before. And you're getting stuff way back in their lifetime. And you're thinking, they never shared this with me before, but they're living back then. And so all those things are fresh to them in their mind. And they're sharing, little things about their father or playmates or schoolmates or things like that, that you're like, wow, you're getting to hear things that possibly you never would have heard. So it's a very interesting time, and let them do it, right? Let them do it. Let them be there in that moment.
I always tell family the world's not going to come to an end if they think their mom is shopping.
Exactly, Maggie. Well, listen, we have covered so much today. Good stuff, good topics. I want to thank you for being on. Maggie and I could talk forever in and around this topic. We've done it for so long. We live to care for people and to train professionals who care for people with dementia. We love running support groups, and we love answering your questions, because I'm sure we've run across that question at some time or the other. If you're a family member or you're just curious, you can send your questions to www.thedisappearingmind.com, and Maggie and I can answer them. I want to do another segment like this. I think it's informative. I think it is, something that maybe doesn't come in a package that people just talk about, but are common things that we've seen over the years that occur that I think it's important for families to hear. Anything you want to share before we close the podcast today?
Thank you for having me on. And please realize that there's so much quality of life that your loved one can experience. Just having that deep breath, that patience with them, and surrounding them with people who love them and want to help.
Thanks again for coming on. And to the audience, I want to say to you, if this has been informative to you, there are so many topics that we want to cover on the Disappearing Mind. We're here for you. We don't want to just do things that seem right to us, but you're the one living it day to day, and you are not alone. There are many resources that we have on our website. I always recommend that you go to the Alzheimer's Association website. If you need help with those resources, again, reach out. Please subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend. And until next time, this is Dawn Platt. Make it a memorable day.
Thank you for joining us for the Disappearing Mind podcast. We hope it's helped you find clarity and support along your journey. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode, visit our website to suggest future topics, and share the podcast with friends and family.